Live, this is 24-hour News 8.
Now at 6, the flooding fallout, cars trapped out of washed out roads.
Senior citizens in wheelchairs stuck out in the rain as a river washes into their home. We're live in Granville where this is happening.
And we're live in Wyoming where families have been devastated by the massive flooding.
And it flooded out everything.
That's all I have.
Look, I have nowhere to go.
It has been a hard and emotional day for many people in West Michigan. Good evening, everyone. I'm Susan Shaw.
And I'm Brian Sterling. Here's where we're at right now. Many streets in our area are flooded or washed out. Dozens of neighborhoods are underwater, and there are a number of families in shelters tonight, plus cities now planning for the waters to rise.
We're hitting this important story with team coverage all over West Michigan. And
here in studio, meteorologist Kyle Underwood has the flooding forecast. But we start with the chief tracking more rain. Bill?
That's right. We've had 4.27 inches of rain in Grand Rapids since noon yesterday, over 9 inches in the last 10 days.
But I want to direct you to woodtv.com so you can get a better look at these forecasts for area rivers, not just the Grand Rogue, but also the Thornapple and other rivers that we're watching closely. Not only the crests, but impacts. That's right now on the homepage at woodtv.com.
All right, thanks, guys. Our camera is capturing scenes like this all over tonight as emergency crews try to get everyone to safety. The warning we're hearing is that if the water is getting close to your home, tonight don't wait to leave because waters could rise quickly overnight. There are 2 mandatory evacuation zones along Buck Creek in Wyoming, Creekside Estates Park, and south of 54th Street on the east side of US 131. 24-Hour News 8's Leon Hendricks is watching rescues in that area. Leon?
Brian, good evening. They've gotten everyone out of the area immediately behind me here at the mobile home park's Creekside. It's a dire situation here in Wyoming. 170 people had to be evacuated, more than that, from their homes.
At the Creekside Mobile Home Park in Wyoming, the creek got far too close today. It forced emergency crews in using boats to get people to safety. Some leaving everything they own reluctantly.
I told him, I said, look, I have nowhere to go. I have no mom, no dad, no money. I wanted to stand there hoping that it would reside, go down, but it just kept rising and rising.
Many who live here had to watch helplessly today, hoping the waters stayed out of their homes. For some it did, but for others it did not.
The water is starting to go in my house. That's all I have.
Some begged relief from wherever all this water is coming from.
Shut off the pipe anytime now, because after all, we don't need any more.
Pets were a prime concern as rafts carried only people and few essentials.
My cat!
Some were able to get theirs to safety.
My little guinea pig.
But for now, there's
water everywhere.
And only the hope that it goes away soon.
There's a lot of people that are going to be left with no home. I wish it would stop.
Reporting live in Wyoming, Leon Hendricks, now back to you.
Thank you, Leon. From Wyoming to Granville now. Joe LaFurgie is live along Wilson Avenue where Brookcrest Retirement Facility is being evacuated. Joe, tell us about that.
Hi, Sue. Actually, that evacuation ended a little over an hour ago. Very successful. I want to show you the pictures here. That is the retirement home, the nursing home. This is Buck Creek. Buck Creek used to be just over the hill, but then it began overflowing its banks and moving towards that facility. I want you to take a look. You see the gentleman there in the front end loader. They are trying to sandbag some of this. This was quite an effort. Less than 6 hours ago, there were 122 patients inside this facility. They planned for these sort of events. I hope they never happen. It appears today that planning really paid off. In all of her 89 years, Catherine Van Dyke says she's never seen it rain like this.
I can't imagine all these places with water.
Van Dyke found some comfort watching her grandson, Granville Fire Department Lieutenant Scott Velman, other first responders, nursing home employees, and a whole bunch of folks help evacuate the nursing home.
Water's getting high, I guess, coming indoors and all over, so I guess we had to get out.
Buck Creek runs next to the home. As the water crept closer and closer, officials knew they'd have to move. About 11:30 this morning, they put their action plan into place. Wheelchair vans and buses lined up. Residents were brought out one by one. Other nursing homes were put on alert.
We did plan for it, actually. About 4 months ago, I met with Christy, who is one of the facilities directors here. and we went over the emergency planning, and we put the plan in action today.
Try getting a hold of all the families that had loved ones in here, and you can imagine with everything going on right now, that was tough to do. So if you have a loved one who was here at Brookcrest, first thing you need to know, they are safe, they are sound, they are dry. Second thing you need to know, most likely they've been moved to Sunset Manor. That is over in Jenison. The number there, 457-2770. That should clear up all your questions. Live in Granville, Joe LaFergie, 24-Hour News 8.
Joe, thank you. To the north side of Grand Rapids, where several homes are flooded near the Grand River just north of I-96. 24-Hour News 8's Marley Ginter is there live now. Marley, what are you seeing in that location?
Well, Sue, look at this. This is what people are dealing with out here. People just coming up out of their homes right now, taking as much things as they can out of their soggy houses out here. We are right at Briggs and Elmdale, and this is what we're seeing out here now. You can see just how high this water has come up out here. The fog through the trees really looks creepy out here, but that gives you an idea of just how high the water has come up. This is what people have been making their way around out here in. Any boats that they can find out here, canoes. We're surrounded by about 3 houses out here that have water that has just come up onto the porches and into some of these houses. A lot of soggy conditions out here. People have not been officially told to leave their homes, is what I'm being told right now. But of course, they're doing that on their own because, as you can imagine, being in these homes with all this water, not a comfortable thing right now. And I see a lot of people walking around in bare feet. Not a good idea either, but I'm sure that they're going to be getting back into this canoe, heading back over to their house because they're trying to get as much stuff out as possible. Again, we're on the north side of Grand Rapids, right at Briggs and Elmdale. We'll be out here to make sure that everyone gets out safely. Live in Grand Rapids, Marley Ginter, 24-Hour News 8.
Marley, thank you. City leaders say the Grand River will not go over the flood walls in downtown Grand Rapids. 24-Hour News 8's Danny Carlson's monitoring that situation for us live. Danny?
Brian, we're just a little bit south of where Marley is. We're on a dock on one of the boat ramps north of the city of Grand Rapids, and usually the water goes up until about that tree. And you can see that tree several feet underwater. I'm on this dock at about the halfway point to where the water was just yesterday when our crews were out here last night. It's being described as an all-hands-on-deck type situation within the city of Grand Rapids. We are told by the mayor the last time the city flooded this badly was back in 1904, and back then the entire west side flooded.
It's less water than Noah experienced, but it's more than we've seen for a very, very long time, my lifetime.
But since that last huge flood more than 100 years ago, the city has built flood walls more than 25 feet high, high enough to stop a flood that there's only a 1% chance of happening. But even so, the city's only anticipating now having about 9 inches to spare.
Grand Rapids is going to be safe. That's absolutely right, but that may be small consolation to the person living in a neighborhood 2 miles from the river whose basement fills up with water because of the storm sewer backups. I suspect that every little bit helps, so shower with a buddy.
Now, the Grand Rapids Fire Chief saying we've been showing you pictures all day of people's homes who are flooded. She was telling us today that if your home is flooded, if your basement gets some water in it, starts to cover up some appliances, make sure to turn off your utilities to make sure that you stay safe. The other important thing the Grand Rapids Police Chief saying today as you're driving out on the roadways, if you can't see the road, if you only see water, it's a good idea not to drive through that water because you might get stuck. Live in Grand Rapids, Danny Carlson, 24-Hour News 8.
Danny, thank you. And on that note, a scary scene tonight in Ionia County. A bridge over Bellamy Creek on Lincoln Avenue is gone. A car fell right into it. This all happened just a few hours ago. Lincoln Avenue runs west of the city of Ionia. The driver is okay. It's a different story for his car. It was eventually pulled out. That road will remain closed for quite some time. You can see there's extensive damage there. They have to do some long-term repairs there.
If you need to evacuate, the Red Cross has several shelters open for you tonight.
In Kent County, the Kentwood Activity Center and Alpine Baptist Church are both open. There are also shelters open in Ionia, Hudsonville, and Fremont. We are gathering all of that information. You can find it, of course, at woodtv.com.
Also at woodtv.com, we've got photo galleries broken down by county. If you can safely take photos of the rising waters where you're at, send them in to report it at woodtv.com or upload them to our Facebook page.
The water is starting to go in my house. That's all I have.
A lot of people distraught tonight. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Susan Shaw.
And I'm Brian Sterling, live in front of the Ford Presidential Museum here on the banks of the Grand River in downtown Grand Rapids, where usually at this time of the year everything's in bloom. Well, the only thing growing tonight is the water level on the Grand. I can tell you right now it's halfway up the slope here at Anabawan Park. All of the pedestrian walkways are submerged. And as I drove down here tonight, they're already using generators to pump water out of the basement of the Amway Grand Plaza Hotel parking garage. So downtown is feeling the effects of the flooding tonight, 2 days before the river is expected to crest. It is a story that has consumed us all day long, and we have team coverage for you again tonight. But before we get too far down the road, we do want to bring in Chief Meteorologist Bill Steffen, who's down here at the museum with me. And Bill, at least it stopped raining.
It is, and boy, that's amazing to see what's out here. Behind me is where I sit and watch the fireworks on the 4th of July. The water's 4 to 5 feet deep. Good news is, though, the rain has stopped temporarily, and no heavy rain is expected over the next several days.
Thank you, Bill. It is soggy. A lot of people watching and waiting now, but at least the good news is that it stopped raining. Sue?
That is good news. Brian, Bill, thank you. Meteorologist Kyle Underwood is here right now with updated forecasts on how high river levels will get.
New information late this evening, forecast data from the National Weather Service, because they produced the forecast for the river flooding situation, and the forecasts have come down a little bit. So we're glad that's going on, but unfortunately, Comstock Park, Robinson Township, number of spots along the Grand, this is still likely going to be an all-time record flood for these areas. So it's a very serious situation. I want to show you what we're forecasting here and some of the observations and forecasts that we're getting from the National Weather Service. We're going to start with the Grand River here and focus on some of the hot spots here, but it doesn't look like we're going to break the all-time record high flood set back in 1986.
All right, Kyle, thank you. So it's bad. It could have been worse, but still tonight there are worries, and a call is going out for volunteers tonight to fill sandbags, this to help keep the Grand River out of the water treatment plant. And 24-hour News 8's Henry Erb is live tonight at the place that volunteers are being urged to go tomorrow. Henry?
Brian, this is 660 Market Street Southwest, the sewage department maintenance garage. There's plenty of sand here for filling sandbags. The rising river is behind that flood wall right across the street. City workers were already filling sandbags here today. We're told the sandbags will add to the protection provided by the flood walls along the Grand River, which is expected to crest this weekend at a record level. We are live on Market Street. Henry Erb, 24-hour News 8.
Our flood walls are designed to handle 100-year floods plus a margin, a 1-foot margin of error, if you will, or freeboard. So we don't expect that the river is going to crest the flood walls.
And that is Grand Rapids Mayor George Hartwell saying that he doesn't expect the river to breach the flood walls here in downtown Grand Rapids. Will that prediction hold? We want to bring in Mark Walton from the National Weather Service. He is a hydrologist. We spoke with him last night on 24-hour News 8 at 11. Mark joins us over the telephone tonight. Mark, do you think the mayor's prediction will hold true, that the flood walls will keep the water at bay here?
Yes, we do at this time.
Give us your prediction now. You've downgraded some of your predictions from last night, have you not?
Yes, that's correct. We've got a lot less precipitation today than we anticipated, so all the forecasts have been downgraded. Currently, the crest for downtown Grand Rapids is at 23.3 feet, and that's to occur on Sunday evening.
If you close your eyes, Sue, it feels like you're out at Lake Michigan.
Honestly, so much water down there. Brian, thank you so much. Now to a place without flood walls, the north side of Grand Rapids near Comstock Park. The flooding is already intense there, and 24-hour News 8's Marley Ginter joins us live with what's happening in that location.
I'm standing at the bottom of a hill right now because I want to show you just how far back the riverbank is. It's actually 3 houses back, so that's how much this water has come up to, because I'm standing at the edge of the water right now. Since we've been out here again tonight, we've watched more people leaving their house in a canoe. So it is just a soggy mess all over the city. Cindy Moore won't be sleeping in her house tonight. Surrounded by water, Moore's grandson had to bring a boat to her front door so she could escape.
Personally, I never seen a flood this big, but it's pretty big.
Moore lives near Briggs in Elmdale Northeast, where the Grand River spilled its banks. Neighbors helped each other get as much stuff out of their homes as possible, prepared for the water to rise even more.
You just never know what the Grand River is going to do.
No way you're walking down there today?
Not today, no. It's probably way deeper down that far.
Rob Diaz walks his dog this way every day. He's lived here for 30 years and has never seen it come up this far. And when the Grand crests this weekend, the National Weather Service warns you'll see even more major flooding in neighborhoods.
It's just part of nature. I mean, it's part of life. You just put up with it and stuff, but he wouldn't trade it because people love living by the river.
I don't know. I'm going to have to wait till the water goes down and then he can bring me back.
And you can see out here where the water has come up on those mailboxes. It's actually risen even more since we were out here earlier at 6 o'clock tonight. So it may be some time before people can get back out to their homes here. On the north side, Marley Ginter, 24-Hour News 8. Sue?
Okay, Marley, thank you. In Ionia County, rushing waters on small creeks leading to the Grand River are causing massive problems, even taking out roads. 24-Hour News 8's Heather Walker is there surveying the damage, and she joins us live tonight. Heather?
Hey, Sue. Yeah, road signs out here say road closed, but that's because if you take a look behind me, there is no road. It's actually been washed away by the creek. Some of the roads still hanging on here, but people living here say this is the worst flooding they've seen.
Crazy. Quite an event.
Just in front of James Rath's home on Lincoln Avenue, a car fell into the Bellamy Creek. Rushing water washed away the ground underneath and the road collapsed. The driver was okay, but it created quite a spectacle. Even after the car was lifted out, people came to see and snap pictures.
It's a disaster.
Heather, thank you for that. If you were watching our broadcast at 5 and 6 tonight, you probably caught some of the heartbreaking images coming out of a Granville retirement community where residents there had to be evacuated because of a flooding Buck Creek. Brookcrest Retirement Community had to evacuate 122 residents. Water flowing into the facility today. The residents, many of whom were in wheelchairs, had to be taken to different facilities. And upstream, there are also problems along the Muskegon River in both Newaygo and Muskegon counties. Our crews were out today downstream of the Croton Dam. The river was up an entire foot. And those who live there tell us they're getting ready for the worst.
Yeah, I've got things elevated. 32 inches, I'm above 32 inches with everything. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed that's going to be good.
Some of the images today, I don't think there was any community in West Michigan that dodged the water bullet today.
There are several shelters open tonight across West Michigan. In Kent County, the Kentwood Activity Center and Alpine Baptist Church are both open. There are also shelters open in Ionia, Hudsonville, and Fremont.
This is continuing flood alert coverage from 24-Hour News 8.
Right now at 6 o'clock, the view of the growing Grand from the sky. It is spilling over its banks from Lansing to Lake Michigan.
In Grand Rapids, a last-minute fury of sandbag filling surrounding the museum just in case the flood walls fail. Kent, Ottawa, and Newaygo counties all declaring states of emergency.
At this time, Kent County is in the midst of some of the worst flooding we've had in nearly a century.
We're just trying to clean the place out for them in case the water does get high enough.
Our team coverage continues now at 6. Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Sterling.
And I'm Susan Shaw. Let's get you up to speed on the very latest developments tonight. The flooding is impacting major traffic ramps on I-96, the on and off ramps to both Chicago Drive and Baldwin Street near Granville and Jenison. Businesses in Ionia are now evacuating as the Grand starts to crest in that city. And we know now the crest will get to downtown Grand Rapids on Sunday night.
Our team's here bringing you live coverage from up and down the Grand River as it goes over its banks. First, we want to start with Marley Ginter, who's anchoring our coverage from Grand Rapids. There. Marley?
Hi, Brian. Yes, we're standing along the Grand River right outside the Ford Presidential Museum. You can see just how high this water has come up. This is normally where you'd be walking along the Grand River right here, and yet we've seen fish jumping out here. We are keeping a very close eye on the river levels out here. I want to bring in Chief Meteorologist Bill Steffen right now because, boy, as we're talking about these levels, too, it's getting windy as well.
It is. That's why I'm standing a little bit back from the water in case I fall back here. We've had some pretty stiff wind gusts. Like I said, there's some branches down here as well. I drove along the Grand River today from Comstock Park down into Grand Rapids. They're actually sandbagging the entrance to Riverside Park because they don't want the water to spill out on Monroe. as the river continues to climb around here. Let's take a look first of all, and we'll show you Storm Track Live. There are some rain and snow showers in the area, but those are very, very light. Won't affect the river level at all.
Back to the Grand, Marley.
Kyle, I'm glad you're trying to lift our spirits, because I'll tell you, standing out here, it seems to look pretty grim, very gray out here right now. You can see the river level is up so high. You see that tunnel right there? I'm sure many of you have walked through that tunnel, walked along this area, along the Grand, and right here in front of the Ford Presidential Museum. But as you can see, not the case today. Now, late this afternoon, Kent County declared a state of emergency, joining Ottawa and Newaygo counties.
We recognize the need that we're looking at almost unprecedented water levels, and the evacuation magnitude and the amount of response that we put into the event so far, and yet the crest is still 2 days away.
Now, this situation is so serious, the city begged for volunteers this morning to come out and fill sandbags. Many of those sandbags are now just downriver from me, just around the Public Museum, and that's where Henry Erb is joining us now live. Henry?
Well, the mayor says the city's flood walls are enough to protect downtown because they are higher than the anticipated flood crest. But the city was using volunteers and sandbags today in places such as this one to take out some insurance because there might be gaps. The call went out for volunteers last night through the West Michigan Environmental Action Council. 300 people signed up almost immediately, and a lot of them were at work at 8 this morning filling sandbags at a city garage on Market Street.
I want to help out, want to make sure the environment's as protected as possible. For me, it's about taking care of what God's given us.
Thank you, Henry. There are big impacts both upriver and downriver from Grand Rapids, and our team coverage continues now. We'll start upriver in Ionia County, where the river is expected to crest sometime tomorrow. Danny?
Yeah, Brian, we're at the Ionia Free Fairgrounds, but it looks a little bit more like the Ionia Lake. And just to give you guys an idea, this fence about 5.5 feet tall. If we take a look to where the floodwaters are the deepest, you can see almost completely full of water. And we're seeing flooding situations, not quite as bad as this, but still pretty severe all around this area.
I'm getting married tomorrow, so go from one of the most stressful days of my life to one of the greatest.
Jim Edlin says nothing can stop him from tying the knot tomorrow. Not the floodwaters, not even the fact that the flowers for that wedding were being evacuated from their Ionia floral home into this trailer.
This is by far the worst. It's probably, I don't know, I expected it's going to go up another foot over there, yeah. So.
Back out here live downtown, you know, on the ground you can definitely get an idea of just how high the river has come up, but we sent 24 Hour News 8's Ken Kolker up above us in a chopper just so you can get an idea of what the Grand River looks like swelling from above.
Perhaps most startling is where the river starts bending just north of downtown Grand Rapids, where the water is free to spread. And it's spreading through most of Riverside Park and across some of its baseball fields, almost into Monroe Avenue. It's flowing around homes on Willow Drive and across the river on a Brigador Trail, turning those homes into islands.
Heather Walker is near Lowell tonight. That's where people are rushing to get the sandbags up in time.
Hey, Brian, they've already handed out 15,000 sandbags, and you can see behind the piles of sand, 17 dump trucks. They're also expecting a couple more. All of this being done by volunteers. People here keep telling me that's Lowell. More than 100 volunteers working in cold temperatures and snow flurries, filling bag after bag after bag with sand. One of those volunteers is Philip Heshe.
Well, I started after I got out of work. I worked at the sheriff's office in Ionia and loaded up some of my friends. We got our Boy Scout Troop 102.
Philip's home is away from the water, but he saw the flooding and had to help.
This is the worst I think it's could get.
It's the community.
Philip and his group have been loading up trucks and heading to homes where water is getting uncomfortably close.
Yeah, I have an aunt right over on Bowes Road, and it's at the back of her house right now. Well, it was as of about 2 o'clock, so I'm sure it's probably past that right now.
Rebecca McMillan is now at her other aunt's home,
Just to help the community.
where Philip and his team are dropping off sandbags to keep potential water out.
We've been working since noon, so we're getting pretty tired, and it's nice to see so many people helping. We'll be ready.
This is Lowell. This is what Lowell does. Lowell helps each other out.
This is continuing flood alert coverage from 24 Hour News 8.
Floodwaters still rising, leaving destruction all through West Michigan. The message tonight, stay out of the water. Our cameras capturing this dramatic rescue in Lowell today. Good evening, I'm Larry Figursky. Thanks for joining us. We have live coverage for you tonight. First, here are the latest developments today. We are the only station that brought you live coverage of both Grand Rapids and Lowell, officially declaring a states of emergency. Water in the basement and power issues have forced the evacuation of Plaza Towers, forcing hundreds of hotel guests and residents to find a place to stay. The Amway Grand and JW Marriott also have water in their basements. Both, however, are open. The Grand River is still forecasted to crest downtown tomorrow afternoon or evening. And city officials continue to say tonight that they are confident that the flood walls will hold. Let's go live now to downtown Grand Rapids, where Brett Thomas is anchoring our flood alert coverage tonight. Brett?
Larry, we're standing on dry ground right now, so obviously those flood walls are doing pretty well in Grand Rapids at this point, but there are some buildings that are affected. Plaza Tower, building right behind me, the second highest building in Grand Rapids. If you look right down there, there's a gigantic pump that's going right now, and all they're trying to do is just keep the water from rising any further than it already is. There's a parking garage down there. There's a lot of storage facilities underneath here. It's basically the basement of the second tallest building in Grand Rapids has flooded out now, and the water's going to keep seeping up if they can't pump it out any faster than they are right now into the Grand River. This obviously kind of a situation here that's causing a lot of people a lot of pain and anguish because there's nobody living here. There are 1,000 people that live in this building right now, but they've all been evacuated because there's no power at Plaza Towers at this point in time. And so it's one of those things where the windows are dark and a lot of that has to do with the fact that Grand Rapids is dealing with this whole flooding water situation. And one person who's been looking into that is Danny Carlson, 24 Hour News 8's Danny Carlson, who's also been looking into the whole idea of a state of emergency that was declared earlier today at 1 o'clock. The mayor stepped forward. We showed him live on our air, him saying, we've got a state of emergency in Grand Rapids. What does that mean?
Well, first of all, let's point out that this is different than what Mayor Hartwell was saying yesterday, that there was no need to declare a state of emergency. Today, he says that there is. He says a lot of things have changed from yesterday to today. One thing in particular, flooding in downtown buildings like the Plaza Towers, like Brett was talking about, and also some of the major downtown hotels are having some flooding in their basements because of groundwater that's coming up into the buildings. Now, the mayor says the flooded river has created so much pressure in groundwater that the groundwater is actually pushing up into those downtown hotel basements, these big hotels we're talking about here, like the JW Marriott, the Amway Grand, forcing them to pump out thousands of gallons of water a minute. If the situation does get any worse, the city will be on a list, so to speak, for state and federal emergency funding if it comes to that.
Should a flood wall breach, in other words, if it began to crumble and the floodwaters rushed through and rushed up into the downtown or rushed into the west side, I mean, that would be a disaster for us.
Now, the mayor's stressing today that that doesn't mean free money. It doesn't even necessarily mean low interest loans, Brett, necessarily because of this declared state of emergency. Basically, he's saying that he's declaring the state of emergency in the city of Grand Rapids for the next 7 days, just in case the city needs it. Now, you were showing that pump actually coming up tonight at 6. Yeah. We were at some of those downtown hotels, and we saw all of that water coming out. It's a really impressive sight, and we'll have more on that coming up in the next half hour.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Thank you so much, Danny, for taking a look at that part of it. We've got the other part of it that we've been looking into. That's when 1,000 people were told they need to leave their homes and go somewhere else. Mark Thompson was here this morning when that was happening. He joins us now and takes it from here.
Just before 9 o'clock, guests and residents here at Plaza Towers were getting ready for the day when the day took a dramatic turn. Alarms sounding inside, followed by strict instructions from management.
What they told us is just to evacuate the building, that there was flooding on the main floor, the power was out, and just to get out as fast as possible.
People were first guided to the Amway Grand Plaza Hotel using the Sky Bridge. Some guests were later moved to DeVos Place.
We didn't think it was that big of a deal at first. So our neighbors came around telling us that the firemen were coming through each floor and evacuating the entire building.
Now at 11 o'clock, the river is holding steady downtown, but worries remain tonight as the high water continues to cause problems throughout West Michigan.
New video from the sky tonight that you'll only see here shows just how much the Grand River has swelled. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this special edition of 24-Hour News 8 at 11 tonight. I'm Susan Shaw.
And I'm Brian Sterling. We are live tonight in front of the Ford Presidential Museum on the banks of the Grand River at Anabawan Park. The river is hovering around historic heights, but it's not quite as high as was first feared. We've got some new video tonight. Our cameras rolling as firefighters had to rescue a kayaker who got in way over his head in Grand Rapids. And you'll hear a warning from the deputy chief coming up in just a moment.
And take a look at this picture. Fish and ducks swimming by the windows at Riverfront Plaza, an office building just south of the JW Marriott downtown.
Here are the latest developments tonight. The Grand River again near or at its crest right now, but it will remain above flood stage for several days. PLAZA Towers remains evacuated downtown because of water in the basement. That forced crews to cut power yesterday. And some of the folks who live along the smaller tributaries, especially in Wyoming and Granville, were finally allowed to return home today. Again, we're in front of the Ford Museum here at Anabawan Park. We were here Thursday night, Sue. The water is up significantly from that point in time, at least 20 to 25 yards off of where it is normally. The last berm protecting the museum here.
That's right. The water lapping up behind us right here as we stand on this hill. Of course, the Presidential Museum to our left. You know, there's a big difference out here, I've noticed from the pictures that we had earlier, because you can see how high the water is underneath the arches of that bridge. And it's significant. You can see all the changes as far as the trees are concerned and how high the water levels are there. Let's bring in Chief Meteorologist Bill Steffen in the 24-hour tracking center right now with more on warmer temperatures, but also more rain, Bill.
Yeah, that's right. I don't think that'll cause any additional major problems for us. That rain coming Tuesday afternoon and Tuesday night. Good news is the Grand River is cresting in Grand Rapids, from Grand Rapids down to Granville at the current time.
Okay, Bill, thank you. Of course, tonight authorities are reiterating just how dangerous these rising waters are. And earlier today, they had to rescue a kayaker.
They did. Take a look at this video we got in tonight. This is around 7 o'clock. A kayaker had become trapped in the water near Riverside Park, reportedly hanging onto a baseball dugout and then a picnic table just to stay above the water. He didn't even have a life jacket on. Firefighters used a jet ski to bring him to safety, and we spoke with the deputy chief after the rescue and just listened to the frustration in his voice.
We've been trying to tell everybody over and over, and I can't get the message through loud and clear. The Grand Rapids Fire Department is telling you stay out of the river and out of the waterways. It's not safe. It's too swift for most people that don't understand it. And again, once again, we've had another kayaker that tipped over and got in trouble.
Frustrated indeed. Another place that police were making sure that people stayed away from, that's the Fulton Street Bridge. This because much of the city's power supply actually runs underneath that bridge. And 24-Hour News 8's Danny Carlson has been looking into that story tonight, and she has this report.
Carrie Beyer and her kids drove in from Zeeland today, planning at first to take advantage of free museum day, but quickly changing their minds. What do you think, this or the museum?
This. I think I'd choose this. It's historical. I mean, it's something that hopefully we'll never see again for another 100 years.
Ken, what are you seeing?
Yeah, Sue, while the city of Granville is actually waiting for the river to still crest, the folks here in the city of Lowell are glad that this unwelcome guest is leaving. In fact, if you take a close look at this neighborhood and the street in this neighborhood, you can actually see this water swiftly moving back to where it belongs.
Yeah, it's going down actually rather good today. All the water that was in the house is draining back out. We've got a lot of mud. We got a piece of sidewalk showing now, which is a good sign.
New tonight, video you'll only see on 24-Hour News 8. A look at the flooding from above. 24-Hour News 8's Leon Hendricks shows us the view.
It's an electronic helicopter with a camera on board, taking us high above for some of the more impressive pictures of the flooding. First to the fish ladder and the flowing waters there. What's normally a major drop-off for the dam is now just a blip in a river swollen beyond its banks. Here's the view across the river from the public museum, a bird's eye shot of the pedestrian bridge there, with waters getting ever close to the bridge's surface. Then there's Chicago Drive in Granville, where the on and off ramps have been shuttered for days, where Arby's has become an island and the street looks more like a lake than a major interchange. Floodwaters today juxtaposed with pristine blue skies and sunshine on a day where rain already fallen is still making headlines.
a lot of people have been hard hit during this flood. A lot of people have also come together. A great example of that today is hundreds and hundreds of volunteers from all over West Michigan came on out to Grand Rapids to help fill sandbags.
24-hour News 8's Ryan Takeo spoke with some of those people lending a helping hand today.
You know, without it, the city is at risk.
Yep. With the Grand growing, there's a need to help keep the river at bay. And not every helper is confined to the city's limits.
It's a good example for him to be able to learn how to help out others.
He is her son.
Okay, Mom.
5-year-old Cody Cabsman. He's helping work in the largest sandbox he's ever seen.
Because I've never done this before.
I have never seen it like this, ever.
No one's seen the river this swollen in the city in 109 years.
It was really high, like that.
It's a little taller than 4-year-old Hannah Kate's guess. Experts expect the Grand to go as high as 22 feet and change. It could crest as soon as tonight in the city.
We saw that on TV today.
This is fantastic. 3 days of this. It's been really fun.
About 1,000 strong have helped the past 3 days. For many, it's overwhelming.
This is your city. This is our city. The outpouring of support has been great.
A city with a river running through its heart has shown plenty of spirit.
Oh, look at that. Now I'm feeling chill.
Thank you. Pleasure having you on board.
With the help from those within and even some neighbors.
It makes me feel good.
In Grand Rapids, Ryan Takeo, 24-hour News 8.
Affecting everybody on such an emotional level.
It is.
Throughout all of West Michigan, it seems. A lot of people are asking, how can we help? And if you're looking for ways to help out, one thing you can do is donate money to pay for the food that the volunteers are eating. If you'd like to do that, you can call 616-456-3054. We've also got that number up at woodtv.com.
So many people in West Michigan coming together once again to help each other. It's beautiful to see.
This is a breaking news alert from 24-hour News 8.
Breaking right now, 2 people caught in the raging rivers of the flooded Grand. It's happened near Johnson Park in Walker.
24-hour News 8's Danny Carlson is there. Danny, what can you tell us?
Yeah, that's exactly where we are right now. And you can see the swollen river over here. This is where the people in a canoe got into some trouble. We're told it was 2 people described in their late 50s to early 60s, a man and a woman. They fell out of their canoe somewhere upriver. They don't know exactly where. Officials didn't know exactly where that happened, saying that they were in water for likely about a half an hour and they likely have some hypothermia right now, saying that they first got the 911 call because people along the side of the river actually heard them yelling for help. Now, within a couple minutes, a kayaker who was just out trying to traverse these flooded rivers, he came across them. He called police. Police were actually saying that he was able to help them significantly in this rescue effort because he was able to talk to them, give them information on where the 2 people were, what their conditions were, if they were awake and alert and alive, and things like that. So they are saying that that kayaker really helped in this particular case. Now, those 2 people likely have hypothermia. As I mentioned before, we are told that they were taken to Metro Health. They were taken from here in an ambulance with the highest priority of ambulances. So we're going to stay on top of this story. And actually, when we were talking to that kayaker who helped the police out, he said he's been out here all day. He was out here yesterday, and he says even after this, he will be out here again tomorrow. And coming up at 5:30, we'll tell you why. Live tonight, Danny Carlson, 24-hour News 8.
Those waters are dangerous. There's no doubt about it. Yeah.
It goes back to what the fire chief said the other night. Stay out of the water.
Yeah.
We are here again along the banks of the Grand River. We'll have much more on the flooding coming up in just a moment. Back now to the major flooding here in West Michigan. And here is what we know, what's been happening at least since noon. Several breaches were found in the flood wall near downtown Grand Rapids, and we're getting our first look tonight at the damage being left behind from the towns that were hit first. We're also learning more about what inspectors are doing to keep those bridges safe.
And we're also seeing that the river levels have actually come down quite a bit since noon. We're monitoring that. They continue to drop. That's the good news.
Yeah, Storm Team Chief Meteorologist Bill Steffen joining us here along the banks of the Grand. That's good news that the water is dropping.
And it is, and you can tell that because you can look at how high up the debris came and then the water's receded back. It looks like we're down about 6 inches here in Grand Rapids. and that is certainly good news.
All right, Bill, sounds good. Thank you for that. We're also learning today the mayor held a press conference, and apparently the water level in downtown Grand Rapids has surpassed the historic 1904 flood. Grand Rapids city officials say that all the work that everyone has done has prevented some of the worst outcomes. You heard from the mayor earlier this afternoon. He says that while the river is crested, the danger is not over. If we get more rain or if there are new structural issues, the city will address those at that time. Now, if you notice any flood-related problems like flooded out streets or stormwater issues, you can call the numbers that you see there on your screen.
Now that the water has actually gone down, officials are able to assess any of the damage that may have been done. The good news is that the flood walls in Grand Rapids have held, and city officials certainly do want to keep it that way. 24-hour News 8's Joe LaFurgie went along today to see how things are going with the flood walls. They were inspecting them today. Joe, what did they tell you?
Yeah, Sue, well, so far so good. Right now we have moved a little bit south of downtown. We're along Front Street. That's the Wealthy Street Bridge over the river. And down here you see that train trestle with that train parked on top, those cars filled with salt, so that train decking on that trestle doesn't float away had the water's gone any higher. And what we're standing in front of is one of the flood walls, a section of one of those flood walls we just told you about. There are miles of these walls throughout the city. They are holding quite well for the most part, but the city crews have found some weak spots. You take a look right here. They just brought sandbags down. In this section was a small crack. You see some of the residual water that made its way out there. We caught up with one of the evaluation teams coming out of City Hall that are covering the waterfront. They say small cracks like these do not pose a serious risk. And with the water seeping in, at least they can now identify where cracks exist and fix them so they don't become bigger problems in the future. But obviously, they're looking for the larger breaches that could bust open and cause serious damage.
All right, Joe, thank you for that. There is a lot of debris floating in the river now because of all of the flooding. Take a look at the video that we took earlier. It shows work crews hauling logs and other items out from underneath the Fulton Street Bridge in downtown Grand Rapids. And there is some concern tonight about damage to the electrical lines that run along that bridge and underneath the bridge. They're working to keep that clear. The bridge, again, was shut down for a time over the weekend, but that stretch is now back open. At the same time tonight, inspectors are going bridge to bridge across West Michigan to make sure that those structures are stable tonight. So how do you know if it's safe to drive over one of them? Well, 24-hour News 8's Ryan Takeo spent the day with one of those inspectors and found out.
At bridges with cement beams like the Jupiter Bridge over the Grand River, inspectors like Wayne Harrell pay more attention to how the water moves.
We're not so much concerned about the beams and things because we inspect those every 2 years. We know what those look like.
What they don't want is something like what's at the Rogue River in Plainfield Township. This tree could clog the river's flow, potentially adding buildup upstream, and if left alone for a while, it could start to wear on the bridge.
We need to get that out of the way before the next storm event potentially brings more material down.
Harold told us crews would remove this tree by the end of today. Kent County has 170 bridges, but about 100 of them look like this. They're called culverts. They're basically drains under roads, like at this stream near the Rogue River. Here, inspectors can remove debris themselves.
We've got, a piece of branch that is across the stream, and you can see, something that we would want to get out of the way. And I would expect, anybody that we have out doing inspections is going to try to pull something like this out, something like that.
In Plainfield Township, Ryan Takeo, 24-hour News 8.
We're talking with Ryan in the newsroom earlier. He says basically if there's a problem with the bridge, crews will likely shut that span down, and they'll have to wait and see when the water drops to see if there's any structural repairs that are needed at that point in time.
We're also getting a new perspective on the scope of the flooding. Take a look at this. It is the interchange of I-196 and Chicago Drive in Granville. On the left is what the area normally looks like. On the right is what it looks like right now. Here's a look at the Grand Rapids Public Museum downtown. Normally, there's a walkway and a lot of room between the river and the carousel inside the museum. Right now, the river is flowing pretty much right next to the building. And this, of course, is where we've been bringing you all these live reports. This is Annabawan Park. We're just outside the Ford Presidential Museum. The river is now covering almost the entire park, but as Bill mentioned a little bit earlier, you can see some of the water is receding now as the debris and the leaves have come up a little bit on the bottom of this berm that we're standing on right now.
The Red Cross is continuing to help people affected by this flood. It still has 6 shelters open from 8 in the morning until 8 at night every day. The locations are also being used as distribution sites. The Red Cross is handing out cleanup kits and hygiene kits, and they're providing meals and snacks to any flood victims. You can stop by to eat or pick up supplies at any of these spots. And if your home has been affected by the flooding, but you haven't had to evacuate, you can call 211 to find out where you can get some help.
Okay, Bill, good news. The water is receding right now, especially east of Grand Rapids. And 24-hour News 8's Ken Kolker spent the day in Lowell taking a look at what the flood left behind.
Yeah, Sue, it's hard to imagine from looking at it, but the water here has actually receded, allowing some to return to their homes for the first time today. Others have been fighting back the water all along.
You gotta take breaks because it just gets old. I mean, the more you sweep, it just keeps coming.
Every hour on the hour with brooms.
I mean, this is one way to spring clean.
Even as the river recedes from her neighborhood, they keep fighting water that keeps seeping back in. It's the same all over this part of Lowell, where some homes are still unreachable except by boat, and where others were reachable today for the first time. One homeowner told us he had a half foot of water covering his main floor. He hopes to get back inside on Thursday with an insurance adjuster.
Keep up with my pace, Kayla. Okay, I'm going. She's been up since 5 o'clock. She's done it 5 times since 5 o'clock. We've been up since 8 o'clock, and we've done it. This is our 3rd or 4th go around.
Pushing it toward a sump pump hooked to a hose rigged up by a neighbor.
We were a close-knit neighborhood before this happened.
Yeah.
And it just made us stronger together.
Now, Kent County health officials say now that homeowners can start the actual cleanup and get in their homes, that they should take some caution. They say don't go into a flooded basement until the gas and power are shut off. And they say if you touch floodwaters, to make sure you wash with warm, soapy water, because you never know what's in that water. Live in Lowell, Ken Kolker, 24-hour News 8.
All right, good advice. Thank you, Ken. From what's left behind in homes to what's being left along the ground. As the water recedes, there's also the issue of leaving behind all of the muck and debris that is in it. But that's not all. 24-hour News 8 Steve Kelso found out some other stuff that was in the water when he went to investigate.
As the river now begins to recede, we're getting a better look at a lot of the debris that's being pushed downstream by the flood of 2013. Crews spent the day here on the Fulton Street Bridge removing that debris and taking it out of here literally by the truckload. Crews were concerned that logs could rip apart a power cable under the bridge, but it's not just logs they found. A picnic table and somebody's boat dock washed up in all this mess. And all up and down the river, the junk is piling up. The heavy rains washing everything in its path straight towards the river. Things you might not even have considered, like everything ever spilled on this garage floor, fecal material from flooded septic tanks, and I think we all know what the deer does in the woods.
From housing debris to possibly automobiles to possibly fencing, maybe dead animals along the way.
But perhaps the most dangerous is that which is unseen, a veritable plethora of fecal-borne pathogens. Coming up tonight at 6, we're going to have some samples tested. On Saturday, I shot this video as Harley Kaminsky had to be rescued from a failed float trip on the Grand in Lowell. The current so strong that rescuers struggled to reach her. And when they did, they were not pleased.
Do you realize how incredibly stupid that was going in there now?
Yeah. So the simple truth is there could be anything in this water. Unless you want me to come and do a story about you, your best bet's just stay out. Grand Rapids, Steve Kelso, 24-hour News 8.
And there is still a lot more to tell you about the flooding situation here in West Michigan. Still ahead, what you need to know if your home has been flooded. to try to keep dangerous mold from taking over your house. We've got a live interview on that.
And we'll take you to one Granville neighborhood where people are just starting to assess what's left in their flooded homes. Okay, Bill, good news. The water is receding right now, especially east of Grand Rapids. And 24-hour News 8's Ken Kolker spent the day in Lowell taking a look at what the flood left behind.
Yeah, Sue, it's hard to imagine from looking at it, but the water here has actually receded, allowing some to return to their homes for the first time today. Others have been fighting back the water all along.
You gotta take breaks because it just gets old. I mean, the more you sweep, it just keeps coming.
Every hour on the hour with brooms.
I mean, this is one way to spring clean it.
Even as the river recedes from her neighborhood, they keep fighting water that keeps seeping back in. It's the same all over this part of Lowell, where some homes are still unreachable except by boat, and where others were reachable today for the first time. One homeowner told us he had a half foot of water covering his main floor. He hopes to get back inside on Thursday with an insurance adjuster.
Keep up with my pace, Kayla. Okay, I'm going. She's been up since 5 o'clock. She's done it 5 times since 5 o'clock. We've been up since 8 o'clock, and we've done it. This is our 3rd or 4th go around.
Pushing it toward a sump pump hooked to a hose rigged up by a neighbor.
We were a close-knit neighborhood before this happened.
Yeah.
And it just made us stronger together.
Now, Kent County health officials say now that homeowners can start the actual cleanup and get in their homes, that they should take some caution. They say don't go into a flooded basement until the gas and power are shut off. And they say if you touch floodwaters, to make sure you wash with warm, soapy water, because you never know what's in that water. Live in Lowell, Ken Kolker, 24-hour News 8.
All right, good advice. Thank you, Ken. From what's left behind in homes to what's being left along the ground. As the water recedes, there's also the issue of leaving behind all of the muck and debris that is in it. But that's not all. 24-hour News 8 Steve Kelso found out some other stuff that was in the water when he went to investigate.
As the river now begins to recede, we're getting a better look at a lot of the debris that's being pushed downstream by the flood of 2013. Crews spent the day here on the Fulton Street Bridge removing that debris and taking it out of here literally by the truckload. Crews were concerned that logs could rip apart a power cable under the bridge, but it's not just logs they found. A picnic table and somebody's boat dock washed up in all this mess. And all up and down the river, the junk is piling up. The heavy rains washing everything in its path straight towards the river. Things you might not even have considered, like everything ever spilled on this garage floor, fecal material from flooded septic tanks, and I think we all know what the deer does in the woods.
From housing debris to possibly automobiles to possibly fencing, maybe dead animals along the way.
But perhaps the most dangerous is that which is unseen, a veritable plethora of fecal-borne pathogens. Coming up tonight at 6, we're going to have some samples tested. On Saturday, I shot this video as Harley Kaminsky had to be rescued from a failed float trip on the Grand in Lowell. The current so strong that rescuers struggled to reach her. And when they did, they were not pleased.
You realize how incredibly stupid that was going in there now?
Yeah. So the simple truth is there could be anything in this water. Unless you want me to come and do a story about you, your best bet's just stay out. Grand Rapids, Steve Kelso, 24-hour News 8.
And there is still a lot more to tell you about the flooding situation here in West Michigan. Still ahead, what you need to know if your home has been flooded to try to keep dangerous mold from taking over your house. We've got a live interview on that.
And we'll take you to one Granville neighborhood where people are just starting to assess what's left in their flooded homes. Okay, Bill, good news. The water is receding right now, especially east of Grand Rapids. And 24-hour News 8's Ken Kolker spent the day in Lowell taking a look at what the flood left behind.
Yeah, Sue, it's hard to imagine from looking at it, but the water here has actually receded, allowing some to return to their homes for the first time today. Others have been fighting back the water all along.
You gotta take breaks because it just gets old. I mean, the more you sweep, it just keeps coming.
Every hour on the hour with brooms.
I mean, this is one way to spring clean.
Even as the river recedes from her neighborhood, they keep fighting water that keeps seeping back in. It's the same all over this part of Lowell, where some homes are still unreachable except by boat, and where others were reachable today for the first time. One homeowner told us he had a half-foot of water covering his main floor. He hopes to get back inside on Thursday with an insurance adjuster.
Keep up with my pace, Kayla.
Okay, I'm going.
She's been up since 5 o'clock. She's done it 5 times since 5 o'clock. We've been up since 8 o'clock, and we've done it. This is our 3rd or 4th go-around.
Pushing it toward a sump pump hooked to a hose rigged up by a neighbor.
We were a close-knit neighborhood before this happened, and it just made us stronger together.
Now, Kent County health officials say now that homeowners can start the actual cleanup and get in their homes, that they should take some caution. They say don't go into a flooded basement until the gas and power are shut off. And they say if you touch floodwaters, to make sure you wash with warm, soapy water, because you never know what's in that water. Live in Lowell, Ken Kolker, 24-Hour News 8.
All right, good advice. Thank you, Ken. From what's left behind in homes to what's being left along the ground. As the water recedes, there's also the issue of leaving behind all of the muck and debris that is in it. But that's not all. 24-Hour News 8 Steve Kelso found out some other stuff that was in the water when he went to investigate.
As the river now begins to recede, we're getting a better look at a lot of the debris that's being pushed downstream by the flood of 2013. Crews spent the day here on the Fulton Street Bridge removing that debris and taking it out of here literally by the truckload. Crews were concerned that logs could rip apart a power cable under the bridge, but it's not just logs they found. A picnic table and somebody's boat dock washed up in all this mess. And all up and down the river, the junk is piling up. The heavy rains washing everything in its path straight towards the river. Things you might not even have considered, like everything ever spilled on this garage floor, fecal material from flooded septic tanks, and I think we all know what the deer does in the woods.
From housing debris to possibly automobiles to possibly fencing, maybe dead animals along the way.
But perhaps the most dangerous is that which is unseen, a veritable plethora of fecal-borne pathogens. Coming up tonight at 6, we're going to have some samples tested. On Saturday, I shot this video as Harley Kaminsky had to be rescued from a failed float trip on the Grand in Lowell. The current so strong that rescuers struggled to reach her. When they did, they were not pleased.
Do you realize how incredibly stupid that was going in there now?
Yeah. So the simple truth is there could be anything in this water. Unless you want me to come and do a story about you, your best bet's just stay out. Grand Rapids, Steve Kelso, 24-Hour News 8.
And there is still a lot more to tell you about the flooding situation here in West Michigan. Still ahead, what you need to know if your home has been flooded to try to keep dangerous mold from taking over your house. We've got a live interview on that.
And we'll take you to one Granville neighborhood where people are just starting to assess what's left in their flooded homes. Okay, Bill, good news. The water is receding right now, especially east of Grand Rapids. And 24-Hour News 8's Ken Kolker spent the day in Lowell taking a look at what the flood left behind.
Yeah, Sue, it's hard to imagine from looking at it, but the water here has actually receded, allowing some to return to their homes for the first time today. Others have been fighting back the water all along.
You gotta take breaks because it just gets old. I mean, the more you sweep, it just keeps coming.
Every hour on the hour with brooms.
I mean, this is one way to spring clean.
Even as the river recedes from her neighborhood, they keep fighting water that keeps seeping back in. It's the same all over this part of Lowell, where some homes are still unreachable except by boat, and where others were reachable today for the first time. One homeowner told us he had a half-foot of water covering his main floor. He hopes to get back inside on Thursday with an insurance adjuster.
Keep up with my pace, Kayla.
Okay, I'm going.
She's been up since 5 o'clock. She's done it 5 times since 5 o'clock. We've been up since 8 o'clock, and we've done it. This is our 3rd or 4th go-around.
Pushing it toward a sump pump hooked to a hose rigged up by a neighbor.
We were a close-knit neighborhood before this happened, and it just made us stronger together.
Now, Kent County health officials say now that homeowners can start the actual cleanup and get in their homes, that they should take some caution. They say don't go into a flooded basement until the gas and power are shut off. And they say if you touch floodwaters, to make sure you wash with warm, soapy water, because you never know what's in that water. Live in Lowell, Ken Kolker, 24-Hour News 8.
All right, good advice. Thank you, Ken. From what's left behind in homes to what's being left along the ground. As the water recedes, there's also the issue of leaving behind all of the muck and debris that is in it. But that's not all. 24-Hour News 8 Steve Kelso found out some other stuff that was in the water when he went to investigate.
As the river now begins to recede, we're getting a better look at a lot of the debris that's being pushed downstream by the flood of 2013. Crews spent the day here on the Fulton Street Bridge removing that debris and taking it out of here literally by the truckload. Crews were concerned that logs could rip apart a power cable under the bridge, but it's not just logs they found. A picnic table and somebody's boat dock washed up in all this mess. And all up and down the river, the junk is piling up. The heavy rains washing everything in its path straight towards the river. Things you might not even have considered, like everything ever spilled on this garage floor, fecal material from flooded septic tanks, and I think we all know what the deer does in the woods.
From housing debris to possibly automobiles to possibly fencing, maybe dead animals along the way.
But perhaps the most dangerous is that which is unseen, a veritable plethora of fecal-borne pathogens. Coming up tonight at 6, we're going to have some samples tested. On Saturday, I shot this video as Harley Kaminsky had to be rescued from a failed float trip on the Grand in Lowell. The current so strong that rescuers struggled to reach her. And when they did, they were not pleased.
You realize how incredibly stupid that was going in there now?
Yeah. So the simple truth is there could be anything in this water. Unless you want me to come and do a story about you, your best bet's just stay out. Grand Rapids, Steve Kelso, 24-Hour News 8.
And there is still a lot more to tell you about the flooding situation here in West Michigan. Still ahead, what you need to know if your home has been flooded to try to keep dangerous mold from taking over your house. We've got a live interview on that.
And we'll take you to one Granville neighborhood where people are just starting to assess what's left in their flooded homes.
And welcome back. Check this out. This is the debris that crews were pulling out of the Grand River today. Parts of trees, docks, even a picnic table, all found stuck underneath the Fulton Street Bridge.
And that bridge is vital to making sure that downtown Grand Rapids lights stay on. 24-Hour News 8's Ryan Takeo was there as they got into clearing all that debris.
Consumers Energy has a lot of electricity running underneath this bridge. It powers most of downtown. But if you were here this morning and seeing how they were protecting it, it seemed like child's play.
Let's get started.
It's a similar concept to an arcade game on a much larger scale.
Similar to what you'd see at Chuck E. Cheese's. You know, put a quarter in and see if you can hold it.
Let's clamp down the top a little bit.
There was a picnic table earlier, there was a part of a dock, there's all kinds of junk.
Kent County crews pulled trees and debris this morning as MDOT engineers and Consumers Energy reps looked on.
We'll do a visual inspection of our conduit. We are concerned.
Officials don't want the debris to damage electrical lines that run under the Fulton Street Bridge. Those power much of downtown, but consumers de-energize those lines, bringing power downtown from other parts of the city. But that's a temporary fix. Now the focus on making sure the lines are okay.
With the debris going down at such a fast rate through the river, we want to make sure that there's no damage.
You don't want it hitting and breaking that fiber optic and that power line, so we need to get that out of there as much as we can.
That's the job of these crews, who carefully clawed trees out of the water, some that seem to have no end. And the machine operator has to do it all blind.
He can't see what he's doing, so he's getting verbal commands.
You want to slide him over this for a little more, you think?
And at the end, there's no prize, except knowing you're trying to keep valuable resources safe. Consumers told us right now they think the lines are okay, but they'll find out for sure tomorrow. In Grand Rapids, Ryan Takeo, 24-Hour News 8.
Welcome back, everyone. We're live along the banks of the Grand tonight. And, you know, we just cannot overstate just how dangerous it can be in that river with all the debris that's in there.
A lot of stuff floating around, but it's the stuff you can't see that has health officials so concerned. 24-hour News 8 Steve Kelso went out today looking for what might be swimming around in the Grand.
A cocktail of debris, poisons, and pathogens. That's how the Kent County Health Department describes the Grand River today. It is so dirty, in fact, they've issued a no contact advisory, but they still aren't conducting any water samples. So today, we're going to conduct our own. We're going to start here at Riverside Park. All right, here goes sample bottle number 1. This is absolutely no place to be. You do not want to be in this water. Take a look when I hold this bottle up to the sun. Yuck. All right, sample number 2, we're going to pull between the Eberhard Center and the Public Museum. Get a little water in there. You might be wondering about the level of protection I've got on here. Well, I'll tell you what, you don't want to touch this stuff. In 1993, more than 100 people were killed in Milwaukee after drinking water was contaminated with cryptosporidia. Of course, that was in their drinking water. This is not your drinking water. Still, I'm told today, they'll almost guarantee cryptosporidia is in this water. I'm taking my samples to Summit Laboratory. They've agreed to run the test to find out just what is living in there. The most likely suspect is E. coli. It is a predictor of what else might be swimming around.
It's not so much the E. coli we're worried about, it's the other pathogenic organisms and viruses that are also associated with water that's E. coli contaminated.
In 24 hours, we'll have the test results back from the lab, and we'll know at that point if and how much stuff is living in this water.
Boy, that was Steve Kelso reporting.
I can only guess.
I can't imagine. We'll find out, though. Welcome back, everyone. We're live along the banks of the Grand tonight. And, you know, we just cannot overstate just how dangerous it can be in that river with all the debris that's in there.
A lot of stuff floating around, but it's the stuff you can't see that has health officials so concerned. 24-hour News 8 Steve Kelso went out today looking for what might be swimming around in the Grand.
A cocktail of debris, poisons, and pathogens. That's how the Kent County Health Department describes the Grand River today. It is so dirty, in fact, they've issued a no contact advisory, but they still aren't conducting any water samples. So today, we're going to conduct our own. We're going to start here at Riverside Park. All right, here goes sample bottle number 1. This is absolutely no place to be. You do not want to be in this water. Take a look when I hold this bottle up to the sun. Yuck. All right, sample number 2, we're going to pull between the Eberhard Center and the Public Museum. Get a little water in there. You might be wondering about the level of protection I've got on here. Well, I'll tell you what, you don't want to touch this stuff. In 1993, more than 100 people were killed in Milwaukee after drinking water was contaminated with cryptosporidia. Of course, that was in their drinking water. This is not your drinking water. Still, I'm told today, they'll almost guarantee cryptosporidia is in this water. I'm taking my samples to Summit Laboratory. They've agreed to run the test to find out just what is living in there. The most likely suspect is E. coli. It is a predictor of what else might be swimming around.
It's not so much the E. coli we're worried about, it's the other pathogenic organisms and viruses that are also associated with water that's E. coli contaminated.
In 24 hours, we'll have the test results back from the lab, and we'll know at that point if and how much stuff is living in this water.
Boy, that was Steve Kelso reporting.
I can only guess.
I can't imagine. We'll find out, though. It's what everybody's been wondering. Tonight, we have the results of the E. coli test our Target 8 investigators had performed on what is in that Grand River floodwater.
Yesterday, 24-hour News 8 Steve Kelso pulled the samples and then took them off to the lab. What were they testing for? E. coli, Steve?
E. coli, and the reason we test for E. coli is it is the indicator. Once a scientist knows that's in the water, then they know that other nasty things are in there too. The Kent County Health Department had not yet tested, and they've got good reason for that. And we decided that gathering the data would give you the information you need to make informed decisions about your behavior around the floodwater.
There's actually some stuff that we can't see in here that we should maybe be concerned about.
Our 2 samples were cultured overnight in a growth medium. When the black light comes on, the truth comes out.
Here is a sample where almost every well is fluorescing with E. coli.
That is from our downtown sample. It shows a level of 800 E. coli organisms in 100 milliliters of water. Put that in perspective, the state of Michigan says you shouldn't touch anything over 300, but our sample at Riverside Park only shows a level of 75. If somebody's watching this tonight and they go, what is 130, and they go, oh, that's 75 is below that, I can go swimming at Riverside Park.
No, not a good idea, because that water quality is going to change very rapidly. That 75 is going to be 799 in a second.
I took our results today to Adam London with the Kent County Health Department. The county has yet to do its own water testing.
Testing wouldn't really tell us anything that we don't already know. It wouldn't add much value to our public health decision making.
We know for sure that the E. coli levels are, almost 3 times higher than what should be allowed even for making contact. That's important information.
E. coli testing just scratches the surface. It proves that there are other pathogenic bacteria and viruses in this water, but it does not test for other poisons that are most likely there. Even without testing, and given your experience, you'd be willing to go out on the limb and say PCBs?
Probably.
Chrome?
Certainly.
Mercury?
Definitely.
Gasoline?
Yes.
Methane? Benzene?
Yeah, all of them.
So, you're probably sitting there wondering, what is a normal level of E. coli on the Grand River? Well, it's a great question, but the truth is we can't tell you because the answer just doesn't exist. It varies with every sample taken. It spikes anytime there's a strong rain. And the levels we found today don't even come close to setting records. But tomorrow, they could. The health department will begin testing daily on Thursday. We'll keep an eye on those numbers until they fall. Sue?
Okay, Steve, thank you. It's interesting to see how that all came back, and it's a little scary, too, what's in that water. You got to be careful.
Don't touch it.
Your 8-day forecast coming up next.